what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Bauman's Breakdown. Once again, here with Mike Jameson. I am Mike Bauman, and we are right in the thick of the holiday season, man. And actually, when you guys hear this, we will be past Christmas and cruising on our way to New Year's Eve, and we're all still here. The world did not end.
Yeah, and there's snow coming for us. There'll be snow, hopefully, by the time you're listening to this, and we're still here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of pissed because I went out and bought this Maserati. I figured I'd have it a week, and then it'd be done.
Yeah.
Now I got to pay for it. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, just go to the dealership with a briefcase full of IOUs.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Like
Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, like Lloyd did. See,
that's a great
sir,
idea.
Sports car, $275,000. Might want to hang on to that one. Such a classic.
Yes,
I love Dumb and Dumber. But yeah, so I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas with your families and your friends and your loved ones, and you had your fill with Christmas cookies, and now you can look forward to New Year's Eve. And yeah, man, it's been looking back on this year, I think it's been a pretty productive one, at least on our end with Toledo Sports Network, and even with this podcast, getting this rolling in late September. And it was something in the works for a while. It was just a matter of when we could find a day to do it. And even though we found a day to do it, there's still other stuff going on. But yeah, it's been cool. And this month it's been fun for us because we started basketball, and you guys just did boxing locally, which is really cool because we're having some more boxing stuff coming through the Toledo area here in like the Northwest Ohio, Southeast Michigan area. And boxing obviously, has taken a hit the last several years because of the rise of MMA and the UFC. And I love that stuff. I love watching that. And I think Dana White is brilliant. I think he's one of the best, if not the best, like CEO in any major sport because the guy is just a phenomenal businessman and he knows how to market his product. And that thing, when he took it over, was nothing. I mean, nobody was talking about MMA, even 10 years ago. And then all of a sudden it was just like, boom. But it's really cool because one of the first times I was kind of like starstruck in a while was like last spring when Tommy Hearns and Buster Douglas kind of joined up and helped put together this local boxing event in Toledo. And it's what's the name of the company that does it? Do you know?
Well, actually, Marty McManus is the head guy that's rocking it right now.
Okay.
But it's called the Purgatory Fight thing.
Okay. Was that the same one as it was in I don't think it was the same one as the one in April.
Well, it was Toledo Fight Nights back when they did that. Now Purgatory's involved, and I'll tell you what, awesome.
Yeah, and it's cool because Tommy Hearns and Buster Douglas, like that was the first time in a while Buster came over to our table and was doing an interview with us, and that was the first time in a long time, talking to the people that I talked to, I was really like, oh my God, this is Buster.
I know.
This is the dude that took out Iron Mike in his prime.
I know.
I mean, I was like, this is kind of surreal, So it was really cool. But you guys just did that last week here in Toledo.
Matter of fact, Buster Douglas and Bronco McCart, light heavyweight. I think he's light heavyweight, right? Bronco from Monroe.
I believe so. Yeah.
They actually sat in during the main event, and but they did a wonderful job. It was as a matter of fact, that's going to air Saturday night here on 13.2 at 7:00. Just some incredible fighting, and it was just so nice to see. Number one, packed house. We're at the new Grand Plaza downtown. Packed house. It was so loud in there, and you'll hear it. I mean. It was so loud. It was just everything was just pegged. You could barely hear people. It was so loud in there. And it was just nice. And Marty and his group did a wonderful job putting that together. It was awesome.
Well, I think it's cool to see, and that was one thing that I made sure to ask Buster about was, how do you kind of get boxing to where it was,
Sure.
back in the day? How do you get it back up to the level where, you had these big cards and these big draws and stuff? And part of it, I think, is getting better at sort of the smaller level, kind of like what we're doing, in Toledo, putting on matches where, you're getting a good mix of local fighters. And who was the main event? Do you remember the other night? Because it wasn't just local guys that we had, right? It was
no. As a matter of fact, the one kid was Tolis. And Tolis was from Monroe.
Okay.
And then the other guy.
And Tolis knocked him out.
No,
the other guy did.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was. I'm not really good at that stuff, because I don't get to, I'm pushing buttons the whole night. So
yeah.
It was so funny because as the fight starts, ding, ding, it's like these two just attacked each other. And even Buster, it's kind of funny listening to Buster. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And Tolis hit this kid so many times, and he almost went down in the first round. And then he got his composure back, and then in the second round, this kid hit Tolis, just hit him perfect, and just put him right on the ground. And he got back up, and he was ready to fight again, but his legs were shaky. He couldn't stand straight up. He was rubbery, and they called the fight. He would have gotten killed if they'd have let that thing go.
It's cool. That's part of what's cool being here in Toledo is because we're kind of like I always tell people who aren't from here, we're kind of like a big little town. And what I mean by that is like it's big enough in that we've got like all there's all parts of Toledo, northwest, east, south, and you've got southeast Michigan. Then you've got all the other surrounding areas around the city in Ohio with like, Maumee, Perrysburg, Rossford, Sylvania, and then even the stuff we do, Genoa and
right.
White House. It's a pretty good chunk of people here, and it's cool because we get a good mix of kind of whatever's going on nationally, just at like a little bit of a smaller level. And I think it's cool that the boxing is getting rolling again because it's boxing. There used to be so many good fights. I mean, even when you were a youngin',
right?
And not that you're super old.
No, but I know what you mean.
But you're older than me. But I mean, you guys had Tommy Hearns and Sugar Ray, and Muhammad Ali was still still hanging around. I mean, there were so many good fighters, and so I really
George
hope
Foreman, you forgot.
Yeah, George Foreman. Well, give me a break.
Leon
Come on, man. Come on. What was the fight with Tommy Hearns? I think he ended up losing, but it was like a classic.
Hager.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hager beat him, right?
It went back and forth. They fought many times.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's his first name? Hager.
I don't know.
Bald guy.
Email us.
Yeah.
Tell us how terrible we are because we're trying to tell stories. We don't know any names. But anyway, it's just cool because of boxing, I think, is...
Marvin Hagler.
Marvin Hagler, that's right.
Old man got it still.
Dun, dun.
Oh, Rocky too, man. No. Carl Weathers.
But man. So
boxed,
I think it's cool that we get to see people like Buster Douglas and Tommy Hitman Hearns and Bronco McCart.
And I got to tell you something. Buster Douglas is the nicest guy.
He is.
I mean, just said him and Steve. They were just. And then when you bring Bronco in, the dude is NBC quality.
Yeah,
he was that good. And when they put the mic on him, and I'm all the way in the back, so I can't see anything. We put the mic on him, and he just started rolling through the. Oh God! And I just kept. I'm like, this guy's great. I mean, he knew his boxing that well. I'm like, oh my God! And he had a blast. So and then Marty announced, right on what we were doing that there's going to be another fight. We're going to be doing the fights in May. Those will be at the Huntington Center though. So he's looking to get it at the Huntington Center. But just props to Toledo for supporting this. It was just awesome.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's great. And and boxing it's a brotherhood, and I think it's a sport that I really think is it's important to a lot of kids. You know what I mean? That come from the broken homes and stuff, and they'd be out fighting somebody else. And so I think it's cool that you see guys like Buster and Tommy and Bronco McCart, giving back to the sport that's given them so much and trying to get it going at a smaller level like we're doing in Toledo. So
Exactly.
it's awesome, man. And Buster is a really cool dude. Like I said, that was the first time in a while where I've talked to somebody and I was like, oh my God, this is Buster Douglas. This is so cool. And he had some health scares, not in the too recent past, man. I mean, some big ones, and he's kind of turned that around. So that's good because boxing needs him and sports needs him. So shout out to Buster and Bronco. But today, man, transitioning it into music, for this podcast, man, it's cool because I think we're starting to build a little bit of an audience, which is cool. And I want to thank everybody who's been supporting the show. It's as I say every week, man, it's humbling because it's continuing to grow and continuing to grow. I think now we're closing in on like 2,500 channel visits, which is awesome. And I thank you all, and I hope you continue to come by. And so far to this point, all the interviews that have been on there have been stuff that I've done from Toledo Free Press, the paper that I write with locally. And they've been interviews that I thought translated well to the podcast format and thought that were going to be stuff that you guys would love to check out. But this week we have a trailblazer of sorts on Bauman's Breakdown, and also a guy that is probably the most down-to-earth, nicest, cordial dude that I talked to who I don't know personally. I reached out to him on Twitter, and, they had an album come out this year that I thought was one of the best of the year and one of the best records front to back in terms of every song being amazing that I've heard in a really, really, really long time. And they're an incredibly underrated band, and he's an incredibly underrated musician. I don't know why these guys don't get more credit than they do, but I'm talking about Doc Coyle, one of the guitarists for God Forbid out of New Jersey. And these guys have been around since 1996. They've been doing it for a really long time, and never really got on the level as some of their peers like Shadows Fall and Killswitch Engage. After Alive or Just Breathing came out, they just blew up 10 years ago. And but these guys are very talented musicians and just really great guys. And I got a hold of Doc on Twitter, and I just said, hey, man, I loved Equilibrium. I thought it was a great record, and I would love to talk to you if you ever come through Toledo sometime. And he said, thanks. And then I just kind of threw it out there. I was like, what the hell with it? I'm just going to ask him, what's the worst he can say? He'll say no, and he says no. And I got a hold of him. I said, well, I do have this podcast, that I'm doing and featuring music interviews and stuff, and I'd love to talk to you, man. I think it'd be cool to kind of try to get this out to more people because I want to champion this record for you guys, and maybe some of the people that I listen to my show maybe haven't heard. And he was like, all right, cool, just let me know when what time. And we talked the other day, and even in the email I said I won't try to keep you longer than a half hour, because usually I feel like a half hour, like if I get a half hour of somebody's time, to me that's pretty gracious, with all the interviews and everything that all these musicians do. I thought, okay, if I can get somebody for a half hour, and Doc was so cool, we ended up talking for like 2 hours. We talked for a long time, and I felt like it was like one of those times where it's like you meet somebody and you feel like you've known them for like, you know what I mean? You have those moments sometimes in life where you just talk to somebody and you're like, damn, this dude's cool. And so we did, man. We covered the whole gamut. He's a big hoops guy. He's a big, huge NBA fan, big basketball guy. So we ended up making this. This is going to be a two-part thing, and today you guys are going to get part one of my interview with Doc Coyle from God Forbid, and it was awesome. I mean, I can't say enough about this dude. It was great talking to him, and I really felt like he was just a brother from another lover, man. I got to say that like McConaughey, he's just a brother from another lover. All right. But he was super cool, and like I said, I know that I sound like a broken record. I say that about everybody, but I'm telling you, this guy is just, I mean, he was the best, man. And so this part one that you guys are going to get today is we talked about kind of, I wanted to go back in time with him a little bit, talk about where it started, how the band got started, how he got into music, and talk about sort of that transition and that collective of East Coast bands, metal bands that have really had an influence. I mean, you look at the modern metal scene, you can't talk about modern metal music without talking about the impact that bands like God Forbid, Lamb of God, Killswitch Engage, Shadows Fall, all these bands from that collective, what influence that they've had. And, unfortunately, these guys, like I said, are just incredibly underrated. And their new album, Equilibrium, that came out in 2012, is freaking phenomenal front to back. So it was awesome to get to talk to Doc. But you guys are going to get the backstory on God Forbid in this part 1 today. So without further ado, I'm going to shut the heck up, everybody. Here is Doc Coyle, one of the guitarists for God Forbid. Well, first, man, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this for me. I really appreciate it. You're one of those guys that I've always wanted to talk to for a while now, and especially when I got this going, I had no idea that if I reached out to you that this would come to fruition. So thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Well, no problem, man. I mean, trying to help people out, accommodate people, especially people that are interested. We do so many interviews, where it's like part of just someone's schedule, or they get put in there by some publicist or something. So it's when people actually are really interested, you definitely want to do whatever you can to help them out.
Well, for sure, man. I appreciate it, and you are you're a trailblazer of sorts as far as Bauman's breakdown goes, because so far all the interviews that I've had on my podcast have just been from stories that I've done for Toledo Free Press. So hopefully this will open up the floodgates for some of the other bands and stuff. But I do appreciate it, man.
I mean, have you tried reaching out to other people like how you did with me, or?
So far, I've kind of just tried to build it up a little bit and see how many people have are checking it out, and I'm kind of just trying to spread it online through word of mouth. And there's so many podcasts, but Podbean's been pretty cool, and so far there's been a couple thousand channel visits, and obviously it's a real specific group of people that you're going towards as far as music goes. But actually, Shadows Fall and Acaro and Killswitch were just here on the 9th in Toledo, and I got a chance to talk to Matt for a little bit from Shadows Fall, and Brian for a second while he was signing some stuff, and a couple of the guys from Acaro. So I'm kind of hoping that I can get some of those guys, because everybody I've talked to from sort of that New England East Coast metal scene has just been like really cool, down to earth dudes. I mean, Matt from Shadows Fall is really cool. So hopefully I can get some of those guys on here for sure.
Yeah, they're good people, man. Know me forever.
Well, for you, man, and God forbid, I kind of want to. There's so much I want to ask you, and I know our time is limited, and I don't want to talk your ear off forever. But as far as kicking this off goes, you guys are a band that have been around now for almost 20 years. 96, I believe, was when it got started. But I kind of want to go back to you personally in terms of how long has music been something that you knew you wanted to pursue?
When I was a kid, it was just just started out as a hobby, but, like with, I think, everything that I engaged in when I was young, it becomes like an obsession, and, it was, I was playing with my brother, and we had, pretty much everything we had done was together, whether it was playing basketball or drawing comic books. We really absorbed, playing metal music, but also listening music and finding music. And then, eventually found the other guys through a friend of ours. So we just started jamming, but it was never, supposed to be like a career path. It was just like something we did for fun. And, and I think when I was younger, I was pretty directionless, in terms of, what I wanted to do in terms of, adulthood. And, but at that time, after I graduated high school, my brother went to college for a summer, and I went to college for a semester, and then, it didn't really take, because we were so, kind of, focused on the band, and the way we both left school, started working, and just really focused on the band. Within like a year of that, we started Century Media. Because we just it's like weird. Like I think you look back now, you don't realize how hard you worked at it and how much hustle we had. But we didn't even look at it like that. It was just like, that's just all we wanted to do, so that's what we did.
Right.
You know? And even in that time period, it wasn't like, oh, well, we're going to get a record deal, we're going to be this huge band. It was still like, we were never looking further than like maybe 6 months down the road. And it was all like super short, limited goals. It was like, all right, let's record a demo, let's record an album, and let's try and, get, let's see if we can draw some people locally and see if we can headline some shows, and let's see if we can open up for this band, let's see if we can play outside of our area, go to Massachusetts, go to Virginia, so all these weird, like, kind of short goals, and we kind of just knocked each one of them off. And then once we actually did, like, a tour, my first tour was in 2000 with Shadows Fall and All Out War. There was just like 8 days, but then once we got a taste of that, that's when I was like, all right, this is a thing. And it's like, this is actually, it wasn't just like, our Pantera home videos or something where it was like this thing that was this far off concept. It was actually like a real thing. And I think that kind of put the bug in our head. We were young enough where we could just kind of throw caution to the wind and go for it.
Did you guys come from a musical family, or was it something that just grabbed you guys, that you and Dallas latched onto? Because are you from, is it East Brunswick, New Jersey? You guys are from?
We're from New Brunswick at the time when the band was really getting going. We lived in East Brunswick, which is one town over. But very musical family. My father's a piano teacher, and pretty much my mother was a singer. And we had Gary.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's cool.
So, our father was a piano teacher and a piano player, and me and my brother pretty much lived with him from the time we were about like 8 or 9 years old, until we were teenagers. So, yeah, I think, and he never, he never put it out there for us to become musicians or even really encourage it. We kind of just found it on our own, and his main, something he was into was jazz and classical, even though he did employ some like classic rock and stuff, Hendrix and stuff like that. He had kind of, there's all like that's the stuff he was listening to when he was a kid, and now he was into kind of more, just crazier music. But it was interesting, my dad, was, 25 years older than me, our brother, but he actually got into a lot of like the early 90s music, like Rage Against the Machine and Tool and Nine Inch Nails and Nirvana. So he was listening to that stuff too. He was just really cool, and he like Public Enemy and stuff like that. So it's like, we just had a cool dad, who was just into good music,
Now, when did sort of the metal bug bite you? Because I know you're also you're an athlete, right? You're a big basketball guy. Like, did there come a time where you had to kind of choose between the two, or was it something that you just did mutually growing up?
I really wasn't when I was a kid though, because I didn't start when I was actually young. I had like no eye-hand coordination. I didn't start playing basketball until I was like 30. A freshman in high school, so I was kind of like awkward, like kind of chubby kid, and then I started playing basketball. But I was never like good enough to like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. If I had started when I was a kid, I had to build, physically. I probably could have played. So that was never really an issue. It was always just it was something I loved. I was just still love. But what was the first part of the question?
Oh, no, No. I was just I've seen all the stuff on like Metal Sucks and stuff, and I know you're a huge hoops dude, and so as a big basketball guy myself, I didn't know if that was something like growing up, if you were like, you know, big into hoops and an athlete, and then also kind of picking between like music, and then eventually there came a time where it was like, okay, I really feel like the music is calling me more.
Yeah, it was definitely it was both, you know, but it was like I just think I was, you know, maybe this is why, you know, like I always had like trouble concentrating on school stuff, because I think I get into my interests, I just, you know, get into it 1,000%. Like, you know, when I was watching basketball when I was a kid, it was, you know, it's funny, I started getting into sports right around the same time we started getting into music, when I was like around like 12, 13 years old. You know, at first on the music side of things, you know, we really got into music by watching MTV. And
back when MTV played music videos and actually played music.
Yeah, but that was like a thing. Like, but the thing is, I don't think we should disparage like kids now just because they have different mediums. Like, if anything, they're better off because at least there's a lot more gatekeepers.
Right.
Before there were some really closed off ways that you could get music, and you had to really, you know, and there's, and you can look back in that, you know, it's kind of like, oh, that was so great, and it was, but now, you know, kids have, you know, there's a lot more freedom, you know, and they can find everything, and there's kind of good sides and bad sides to it. But the interesting thing was, but I was just watching MTV. I'd watch everything on MTV. So I'd watch, you know, In Vogue and Naughty by Nature and, you know, REM and all the, you know, and everything that was really coming out at that time. And I liked everything.
Right.
You know, I didn't really, you know, there was obviously certain things I didn't like, but I just liked music. And then as time went on, you know, I just really gravitated towards the heavy stuff, and it was, you know, and then really was like Guns N' Roses, Metallica were like my favorite bands, and then, you know, and then I started watching Headbangers Ball, and then it became Pantera, and it became Slayer, and then, you know, then over time, you know, and then I think once we started playing guitar, you know, you start, you know, looking at music through a different prism, you know, you know, instrumentally. You know, which is, I think, pretty common with metal fans, is a lot of metal fans play. Right. And so there's that other, they got skin in the game kind of in a different way. Because, you know, and that's what, and there's a whole musician culture, especially now, even more so because of the internet, you know, where there's like a lot of bands where all their fans are musicians, you know? Yeah. Theater, probably 80% of fans are musicians, bands like Periphery and stuff like that, you know, the whole, you know, Rush, you know, bands like that, where it's, you know, it's nerdy because they're really, you know, they connect to it in a different way. So that's when I really started getting that, and then as we got older, then it was like only heavy shit for like maybe 2 or 3 years, where that's when we started getting to like At the Gates and Morbid Angel and Suffocation, and really like, and then started going to hardcore shows and getting into a lot of, you know, bands like Candiria, Dillinger Escape Plan, you know, and there was the local, it was a really, you know, that was one thing that we were lucky about was living in New Jersey, because that, you know, that era for, you know, I'd say from, you know, between 96 and like 2000 was like really, really just a hot spot in terms of bands being creative, and a lot of really good shows coming through. Like, we had a really vibrant scene. I know it's really diverse. It was like punk rock, it was beat down hardcore, it was, you know, deathcore before it was like called deathcore. Now this is like, you know, 15 years ago there was a genre called deathcore. Yeah. You know, and there was like, you know, kind of like emo bands and grind, and just everybody would play with everybody. Then you even had bands like E-Town Concrete, which like comes from like a hip hop thing, and it was like there was a different, and we were a metal band who didn't really fit with anybody, and that kind of diversity was really cool and really rare. It was before bands were really big, in terms of that. Like the biggest band at that time was like DOD.
Yeah.
They're on Roadrunner, and that was like the big band. And then Hatebreed got big, and that kind of, created a whole wave, stuff where bands kind of crossing over, kind of post new metal,
Yeah, take me back to the mid-'90s for a minute, because at the time, at least in the mainstream, it was, grunge, post-grunge, and then you had, like, Smashing Pumpkins in the mid-'90s, and that was kind of when Alice in Chains started to sort of, kind of things were changing with them, and there was all this sort of like a huge alternative type of scene in the mid-'90s, and I think a lot of that spurned out of like what Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and Pearl Jam did in like the beginning of the decade. What was it like for you guys? Is it? Oh, go ahead.
Time because it was like, if you think about it, all the grunge bands were either breaking up, right? Like Soundgarden broke up, Alice in Chains Daily died. Kurt Cobain died. All of them are breaking up, and then all of the true kind of old school metal bands like Iron Maiden. Bruce Dickinson wasn't in Iron Maiden. Rob Halford wasn't in Judas Priest. Dave Lombardo left Slayer. It was like all the, Joey Belladonna wasn't in Anthrax. You know what I'm saying? It was like this whole like thing of it was a little more hapless, but Pantera was the best band in the world.
Yeah.
They were still an arena band.
Yeah, because '96 was the Great Southern Trendkill, right? Was that? I think that came out in '96.
That was the first show we ever went to. It was me and my brother and a friend of ours named Byron. We went to the show. They played with White Zombie and Deftones opening.
God, what a bill that was.
So it's like this real, like two-sided coin. So it's like this world of big rock metal concerts. And then, so we went to that show and then didn't go to another show like that for like 2 or 3 years. And then we only went to like underground hardcore shows and like death metal shows and things like that. Really got involved in that. And so it was like, and I think that's what, when there's kind of a, and then right after that, if you think about it, Pantera really paved the way for new metal.
Right.
And that, because there was, they're a groove band, and that's a thing that, they were a great segue from thrash metal to new metal. They brought the groove, they kind of tuned the guitars down a little bit, simplified it a little bit, and that's, kind of, even like Tool, Radio Machine, those bands kind of were like that mid-wave band. And then, then Korn came out, the Knuckles team blew up. We liked, pretty much, we liked Korn, especially like, I got into on the second record, liked Deftones, the same thing, got into on the second record. And then it seemed like a million just terrible bands showed up.
Yeah. Then everybody started doing the down-tuned 7 strings and all that. Everybody, and I love Korn. They're one of my all-time favorite bands, and I saw them live a couple of years ago, and they're great. But everybody sort of took their formula and just sort of ran with it. You're right.
Well, and usually that's how it is. It's not the people that start a genre that you don't like. It's the copycats and the people that kind of water it down. And then there's also, a fashion thing, where it's like big pants and, and people with weird hair and, and those. So, and that was always, and the thing is, at the time, even though, like, I liked Korn, I liked those bands, it wasn't really who we were. We were, our favorite bands were Testament and, Carcass, and what we consider to be like real metal. And it wasn't that no one was playing it. It's just that we would see a lot of people who were like, "Oh, I'm into the talent, I'm into that stuff, but I'm gonna play this because that's what's going on now." Like, guys could solo, like dudes could play, but they would purposely like not play what they could and that was even like a grunge thing.
Yeah.
People stopped. People like it got real simple. Kurt Cobain was the world's hero, and it was very simplistic, which is fine. But that's one thing that I guess that grunge and new metal had in common was that you didn't, from the outside looking in, you didn't need a lot of technical ability to play. And it was considered, I remember, it's like, dudes stop playing solos. It's like weird, like, the first two Slipknot albums don't have guitar solos.
Yeah.
And then the two after that, the dudes are, you're like, oh yeah, these guys are ridiculously good at guitar.
Yeah, yeah.
And they just didn't play it. They just didn't play it. Or even Seven does. Like, I think the first album has a couple solos, and then they stop playing solos, and then you're like, the new Seven Dust album with the Call Me Nowhere. I was like, oh yeah, Clint Lowry is like one of the most badass guitar players out there. Or even Mark Tremonti from Creed, great guitar player. But
yeah, same thing with Disturbed too. And I love The Sickness. That's one of my all-time favorite albums. But even Dan Donegan, you started to see him start to rip a little bit more their last couple albums.
But I'm saying all those dudes probably could do all that shit way back in the day, but they didn't because it wasn't considered to be cool or whatever. So that was like a thing that it pissed us off. And that was kind of like even though I actually did like that first Disturbed album when it came out, our first album was called Reject the Sickness. It was almost like, look all this new metal shit. Bringing some because it was, and it was, and I remember, and when the album came out, my buddy, he was a DJ at WSOU, which is like the big local college radio station, Seton Hall. And he ended up working with this guy named Tom Rock, and he was like, why don't you guys talk to Roadrunner? And at the time, I was like, Roadrunner? Why the hell would they sign a band like us? We're not, we're doing some underground shit, man. They're like, I felt like we were so, I remember going to Ozfest for the first time, I think it was in 2000, it was like 99 or 2000, and it was like, POD, and Linkin Park, and Mudvayne, and it was all new metal bands. And I was like, bands mixing, hip hop and metal and stuff like that.
Like Limp, I remember Limp was huge. That was that was like right around when I was getting into junior high, and I remember Limp came out with Chocolate Starfish hot dog flavored water, and I think it went platinum in like a week. Like new metal, that like the early 2000s, that was crazy new metal. Yeah.
I think at the time it was like the biggest selling rock album in a week. It was like because it broke in. It was number 2 with I think Pearl Jam Versus. And it like broke into record, yeah. But actually that year, I think it was 2000, 2001 was the biggest, even to this day, it was the biggest record sales years ever in history. I mean, there were like 12 albums that sold like 10 million copies a year. It was like Backstreet Boys, Linkin Park. It was, and so that was a really kind of an interesting era because it was basically the peak, and then file sharing happened.
Yeah.
And then it was just down. And that was a really kind of, it was a very interesting era because, it was like, so it was just, music was big, pop music was big, Eminem, all those bands I just mentioned. So it was definitely an interesting era. Just go down.
So for you guys, were you having to in that period between like '96 and then I think it was '01 when Century Media came along, right? Were you guys really having to like fight for fans? What was it like being sort of like a metal band that was more based in sort of the thrash and the groove at a time when nu metal was reigning supreme? Like, was it like a dogfight every time you guys played shows?
Here's the thing that I don't think people really know and really can't know is that there was no scene for the style of music we did. You know, it was basically like hardcore bands, you know, but like more straight up hardcore bands. And then it was death metal.
Yeah.
You know, and there was not a hybrid scene like what is now known as metalcore. Like metalcore back then was considered to be like Earth Crisis. You know, or, you know, that was considered to be, like, metalcore had a different connotation. Even, like, then, like, Biohazard was called metalcore, because I was like, oh, yeah, it's metal and it's just hardcore. The thing is, we didn't really have hardcore in our sound, even though we were in the quote-unquote hardcore scene. But we weren't listening to Agnostic Front and Sick of It All, and then putting parts like that in our music. So, there wasn't, yeah, so we were just trying to fit in. It was tough because we were a metal band in the hardcore scene. You know, one thing we learned really quickly was that it was very political, like how you got on the shows, and the thing about, you know, me and my brother became really good networkers. You know, we were just at every show. And it was like one of those things where we were around enough that people just started to know you.
Yeah.
And you know, and they wanted to, you know, eventually, you know, you give them a demo tape or something, they listen to it like, yo, man, that tape is pretty good. And, you know, and you kind of get, you know, and we were just, you know, this was the early days of the internet, but there was like this one website called East Coast Hardcore website. And they would have like a list of all the shows that were in like the Northeast, and you know, have shows in Connecticut and Pennsylvania, you know, and we would just look at the venues, like, okay, bands are playing here, so we get, you know, look up that venue, call them up, hey, what's up? We want, you know, you need bands for the show, you need, you know, and then, you know, sometimes it'd be like there was one place called CC's in Music, Pennsylvania. I think that was one of the first times we played out of state. And it was like, I think we played just with like local hardcore bands, and then we came back and played with like Buried Alive and All Out War. It was real slow, man. It was just like kind of just chipping away at it. But nothing for us really happened significantly until we put out our first album, full length, for Rejected Signals, which came out in 1999. Because it not only musically, no one was really doing what we were doing at that time. We recorded with a producer named Steve Edwards, who at that time was the best producer in hardcore. He did like Hatebreed, Hatebreed's Satisfaction, Death Desire. He did all the Snapcases albums, Dillinger Escape Plan, Turmoil.
Every Time I Die's in there too, right? I think or at least in the time since, I think he's worked with them.
He's been working with Steve in the last like 2 or 3 records, but they didn't start with him. I'm talking about at that time in '98, he was the dude.
He was it.
Yeah, and if you listen to, he did like every big Victory record. He was recorded right in New Jersey, so we could actually get him for a very reasonable price. So he produced that out, and it sounded so good. It sounded professional. Just like at this time, it was very hard and very expensive to get a really good sounding record. Like you stood out. And, bands with record deals have good sounding records, and that's it. Everyone else that doesn't happen. Like that, like.
Did you believe it at first, or did you think somebody was screwing with you? Because there's been a few bands that I've talked to since I've been doing like music stuff, and actually it's funny you mentioned Steve Evans. There's a band Wilson out of Detroit that I think people are going to be hearing more about pretty soon here, but they just recorded their upcoming debut. Wilson. It's really hard. It's really hard to find them. I mean, because if you type in Wilson on Google, you know, you get like 5 million searches. But yeah, they got an interesting sound. It's kind of like southern party rock mixed with like a little bit of like metalcore. They're really cool guys. But they recorded with him, and they were talking about how they were on like his email list or something, and he like emailed them and said, hey, I'm like interested in working with you guys, and at first they thought it was like BS because they're like, nah, this is a joke. So like at that time when you got that call, were you like, is this really happening?
No, I pretty much knew it was legit. I just didn't. It's just one of those things that it wasn't that we didn't think that call was real. We just didn't think that the deal was real because it seemed like far. It seemed like Neverland. It seemed like something far off. But I think kind of further illustrate that point, I would say that never happened. But you know what I'm saying? They never saw us live. There was no courting process. Like, labels are, especially back then, when they were, there was actually, like, real record deals or, they were giving people a lot of money. And we didn't get, like, a crazy record deal. We got a pretty modest record deal because we were an unknown band. But, usually they do some vetting. They actually, there's a courting process where it's like you get to know each other. Like no one, it's just rare when someone calls us, hey, I want to sign you.
Yeah.
So it was definitely like left field. And that's what happened. The other thing happened was when that album came out on a small record label that a couple of our friends put out, and when it came out, it was like immediately there was traction locally. We became a band that we had fans. Like it was good enough where because there was that blurry middle ground when you're a local band when you don't really have fans. Your friends come out, people in the scene kind of get to know you, and they support you, but you don't, and it's like you're good when you have actual fans, like people who do not know you personally and come to see you and buy your t-shirts, stuff like that. And that was like the first time there was that element there.
When you see the room go from like 50, 60 people to like 200, 300 people, and you're like, oh wow, we're starting to get some traction here.
Well, we did a show. There was a place called the Melody Bar in New Brunswick, and it was like the local. It was a bar, but they would have shows there, like a good sound system, like a tiny room, and it would sell out like 200 people. We did a show as us. His band Nora, who was actually Carl, who owns their records band, Killswitch Engage, Blood Has Been Shed, and Burnt by the Sun. So it's like all these bands that kind of, the ironic thing was like Howard from Blood Has Been Shed eventually joined Killswitch. They obviously became the biggest band out of all of them. But I was like, it was a really, for that, that was a really killer lineup, and we were headlining, so I kind of like, that was our first like really big headline show, and it was with Tax. People went absolutely crazy. That was like the first time that we were like, oh, we're actually something. This is real. It was a big deal, because to be like a quote unquote big local band, we were seeing kids, we were at every show, so that was like a really kind of a game change moment, and but it was still hard to like do that, like in other places, like to go to New York and go to Long Island and go to Pennsylvania and actually pull kids. It wasn't really until we started touring a lot until we became kind of a band that people cared about, multiple places.
Yeah, can you talk about like sort of going into the early 2000s, and even you mentioned Killswitch Engage, and even talking to Mike D when to do a story when they came through Toledo a couple weeks ago. He was kind of talking about how when Roadrunner was pursuing them in like the late 90s, early 2000s, when they were doing regional touring and stuff. He was like, we kind of thought it was like a farce at first, because we were this way different than all the bands that they had signed, but then in the early 2000s, it kind of seemed like for you guys too, that's kind of what got the ball rolling, was God Forbid, and I know you guys did stuff with like I think Machine Head was in there, and you started to get all these tours, like, and then there was like the Headbangers Ball tour. Was that when you guys really started to feel sort of that large audience?
Well, the kind of the timeline there is a little off. So when we really started, so there's kind of some things that happen that no one really knows about that really, almost to this day, kind of affect how things are. So what happened was, Central Media wanted to put out Rejected Secrets, our first album, which was released on an indie label by our buddy. So they wanted to buy the album from our friend. He hemmed and hawed and didn't want to give up the album. So they signed us, but they didn't end up taking. They wanted a new album. So immediately after we recorded Rejected Sickness, we had to go and write a whole new album.
That was Determination, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which was really hard. Like we were we were still working day jobs, and we were basically having to write a whole album in not much time. So that was kind of pressurized, because we were worried, is it going to be good enough? Because we're kind of pushing ourselves creatively. And it was also, no one got to hear Rejected Sickness outside of our local area. So, and then Shadows Fall came out with Up on Blood in 2000. Now, if Central Media would have put out that album, Rejected Sickness would have come out first on Central Media. And basically, we would have gotten credit for being the first band of our genre.
Right.
But because but it wasn't like we were really, because Shadows Fall had an album out called Down Rise to the Sky. Burn the Priest, I think their record had come out. So we didn't really invent it. We were part of a group of bands that kind of simultaneously were doing something in a similar vein. And Killswitch didn't come out until 2000, something like that. They were kind of the last band out of all those bands to really get going.
Yeah, I think it was 99 when they kind of pooled together. Was it Aftershock and Overcast, and then I think, and then in 2001, I think it was 2000 or 2001 where they had their official debut, and then Alive or Just Breathing wasn't until I think 2002, something like that.
Yeah. So they were kind of the last, but it was really those four bands, and there were other bands who were kind of around, but they really weren't, from our perspective, they weren't really metal yet. And that was Unearth, Darkest Hour, Diecast. That were basically, they were more hardcore bands, or Darkest Hour, I guess, was even more kind of a punk kind of band. And then over time, they got more. So by the time 2003, 2004 rolled around, they were already polished. They were more metal bands. But at the time, they were, at least from what we could consider, they were they weren't as metal as we were. So I really put those bands really as the first group of bands to really do what we were doing. But yeah, so Determination doesn't come out until 2001, after Shadows Fall had been out with Open Blood. So they kind of blazed the trail in terms of touring. Because at that time, Lamb of God wasn't touring, Killswitch wasn't touring. They were still, in a lot of ways, those bands were a bit smarter. I think the around and Determination came out. And, you know, we had the same manager at Travis Fall, actually. And this guy, the Rev, with the Syndicate. And, you know, they got us a booking agent. We just toured and we got great tours. So we toured with Nevermore and Opeth's first U.S. tour. We toured with Cradle Filth on their first full U.S. tour. 6 Feet Under, The Lamb of God, what else? Guar, Hatebreed, Chimera, at the end of that cycle, we actually did like a little mini headlining tour with when Ben Sevenfold opened up for us, you know, when they were the branded band. So we did a lot of touring. Toured Arch Enemy, all of them, Poison the Well, tons of touring. And to be honest, at the end of it, we sold a decent amount of records, but we still couldn't really draw that well. But we thought, you know, we played for all these people, like, you know, we'll be killing it, and the shows were not that good. We're still pulling like 50 people, whatever, 100 people, you know, if you're lucky. We'd still do all right locally, but it wasn't, you know, what we wanted it to be. You know, so that was like a tough pill to swallow, because we went out, we kind of lived our rock and roll fantasy, and we came back home and we were like, oh, we don't have jobs, and we're broke, and it didn't turn out to what we thought it was going to be. So then, you know, we started working on Gone Forever. It was a really tough area for the band, because we felt like we were not validated for like the out. Like it almost seemed like it's weird. Like now, people talk about Determination like it's this seminal classic album, you know. But at the time, it just seemed like it got weird. They got like some critics loved it, and then some people just didn't get it. And like I said, it didn't really show up in terms of like people coming out to shows. So we didn't, you know, we felt like it wasn't really appreciated. So we thought there was something wrong with what we were doing. Like, oh, we're too weird. So we kind of started questioning ourselves, and our taste started changing. And also, like, you know, so, you know, we just decided with Gone Forever, we wanted to kind of be more straightforward, more streamlined, catchier, you know, really kind of take the things that we do best, and really have that be apparent throughout the whole album. And that just, there was a lot of like friction with the band between my brother and myself, and like our drummer and how he was playing, and we weren't totally happy with firing our singer. So that's when, like, because we wanted some melody in the vocals, that's when Dallas started singing. There was a lot of tension. It was a very contentious period, you know, trying to make that album.
And this is like early mid 2000s, right? Because Gone Forever, that was 2004 when that came out, I think.
Yeah, this was 2002, 2003.
Okay.
You know, and this is like we almost broke up. It was tough.
So what kept you guys together through all that stuff?
Part of it was actually our manager, you know, really kind of kept us together, and you know, I remember having a conversation with him while I was working a security job, and I spoke to him, you know, and kind of just like there were people that still believed in us, you know, and you know, and I think it's, you know, and the thing is that the problem, it was just that thing of being like, you know, finally getting to do what you really want to do full time, and then coming home and kind of being like, oh, I'm really not that, because I have to go and do this other thing. I gotta go landscape, or I gotta do this. And it's like, it's about your identity. Like, am I a musician, or am I a regular Joe? You know. So then we finally get that album done, and we make a decision. We want to get Colin Richardson to mix the album. You know, who was like the god of heavy metal production as far as we were concerned. He did Carcass Heartwork and Fear Factory Demanufacture and the first two Machine Head albums. Like, it was just the air was just different around the band. The same thing happened with Gone Forever, where it was immediately palpable, you know, that we were at another level. As soon as it came out, and you know, and going to keep in mind, we still hadn't really done like the successful headlining tour, and then basically the time in between us putting out Determination and us finishing Gone Forever, Killswitch, Lamb of God, and Child of Smoke completely blew up.
Yeah.
Like, overnight. Like, and that was really tough pill to swallow for us, because we felt like, we're like, well, how come it's working for them, but it's not working, you know? And I don't think some people get that, like why we have an odd relationship with Determination, because we put the album out and we busted our ass, and it was like very little traction, even though we sold these records, and then basically it was like a 6-month window where those bands had all put out new records, and it just popped, you know. And then so then we did the Headbangers Ball tour, like you mentioned, before Gone Forever came out. It was already done. The albums were done, but it hadn't come out yet. And we were playing first out of 4, you know, and they were like triple headliners, and we were like the meager opening band. And I'll tell you, no one knew who we were. After touring for a year and a half on all those big tours that I've mentioned, no one knew who we were. And it was hard not to be bitter about that. You know, like, we're like, what? You know, so it was like this thing of questioning, like what happened, you know?
Yeah.
You know, in between those, like I said, it was just such a very short amount of time. And ultimately, it just, like, you know, it's like, years are kind of coming in terms of it. It just might have been that maybe those bands they were the right bands. So it doesn't have, you know, it's not, maybe we just weren't that band that people connected to, you know. But the thing is, we were questioning our stuff before Gone Forever, because then Gone Forever came out, and really, like, you know, we ended up touring with Machine Head. We did 2 tours with Machine Head. We did Ozfest, and that was, like, the biggest thing we'd ever done. You know, it was, like, Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Slipknot, Slayer, you know, and then with all our off-date shows, with Slipknot, Slayer, and Hatebreed. So that was, like, that's something when we started doing the Fighting Things that I thought would happen. Like, that was beyond the expectations or even the dreams, because that just seemed like fake, you know. And then that album sold really well and put the band in a whole different, you know, class where we could actually start making some money from doing this, and we started touring, you know, going to Europe and stuff like that, and you know, went to Japan in Flames, and that's when, like, you know, we felt like, okay, maybe this is happening for us. After, like, the year before, kind of questioning all of it, like, why are we not where we think we should be? Why are all these bands getting attention we're not? And so that kind of when Gone Forever came out, we felt like it was our turn, you know?
Yeah, and I've seen all the stuff on like the Killswitch DVD, and I've seen stuff that you guys have done with like GFTV, and I know that you've done stuff with Lamb of God and helped them out on tour. Can you kind of talk about, I know you mentioned that, you know, and I can only imagine that it probably was really tough for you guys to see like Alive or Just Breathing come out, and then all of a sudden it's just like bam, it's just it was everywhere, and then I think Lamb of God, was that Ashes of the Wake, was that the one that came out that really put them on the map? I'm trying to
really, I mean, for them it was every album really just was like a notch up.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was really like a particular breaking point, but it was like everything they did just, especially like I said, the first like 4 albums, every album was a big jump in terms of their popularity, their perception. And then, you know, because they did As the Palaces Burn, and then right at that time they signed with Sony. So that was like, you know, they were the first band out of all those bands to sign a major label. Well, the thing about Alive or Just Breathing, I mean, I think I mentioned this on the Killswitch DVD, was that Darkness, and it had a lot of Just Breathing, the title track. And the production on the demos was basically almost as good as the actual album. And like I said, production was important back then because it was really expensive and hard to get a really great. And it was like, and basically as soon as we heard it, we were like, yo, we're done. Like we knew it. Like immediately, we're like, we're fucked because they had hit that perfect note of something new where it was undeniable. But the reason I say we're done because it's like that thing when you feel like you have a certain niche, and it's, musically, artistically, and someone kind of one-ups you, we were different bands, but we shared influences.
Yeah.
We were, there was, things that we had in common in terms of what we were trying to get across. And they hit a fucking eight. But I hate to use the word formula because that makes it sound less credible. But it was a formula that was just and that's the reason why that album did what it did, because it was undeniable and it was new and it was fresh and it was like and it shapes heavy music for another decade. There's still, it's like, you kind of marked a great band by how their influence, like, Korn came out and started an entire genre of music. And a lot of ways you could say Killswitch did that same thing, where it's like, metal riffs and breakdowns and, a tough frontman, doing melodic singing, they weren't the first band to do singing and screaming, but they did it in a way that was like a thing that people gravitated towards and could. They got the formula too. Like, oh, that's the formula. I get it, And then you kind of, you actually have to have talent to pull that off.
Well,
it's actually really hard to do what they make it really easy,
Well, for you guys, it seems like there was like a brotherhood though, like with some of the stuff that I've seen, like with you and Lamb of God and Killswitch and Shadows Fall. Like it seems like there's like a collective there of bands. Like and I can only imagine that was a tough pill to swallow for you guys, because it's like you busted your ass and your tour and you're like, what the hell? But at the same time, was there still like man, we're happy for these guys though, because we know this could possibly maybe open up the doors for metal to kind of come back to the forefront.
We were definitely trying to ride the coattails of all those bands, and that's kind of what led to the success of Gone Forever, was that if those bands didn't all take, like, remember I said, like, there wasn't a scene for what we did?
Yeah.
Now there was. You know what I'm saying? Because those bands had broken through, and then in the UK was what started calling it the new wave of American heavy metal.
Yeah.
And that was the first time we were ever like part of something, like a movement, before we were always an outlier. So we did all right, there's this market there that's been created, and we're going to capitalize on it. And we did. We never got, like I said, we never got as big as any of those bands, but we did pretty well for ourselves for several years.
Yeah, and
but we are like really, like, even to this day, I'm still close with all those bands, and we still, we just toured Shadows Fall, we just toured Killswitch. Like I said, I played with Lamb of God, and there's still a fraternity there of just friends, outside of anything, just because we, it's like, they say you can never make new old friends, and we're all just old friends. And to me, it's not really, I think, perhaps some of those reservations I had, when I was younger, I don't have anymore because, I think you're just able to look at things more objectively with time. And I think, no one's entitled to anything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, no matter how good you are, you're not entitled to success or whatever you think that is. And B, sometimes there's just, you make bad decisions, or perhaps some of the personalities in your unit, you know, do things that kind of sabotage the situation, you know, so that happens. And then sometimes it's just, you know, luck. Right place, right time, you know, and you can't, that's one thing you can't control. I think it's like, you know, 30% talent, you know, 30%, you know, shit that you're in control of, and like 30% luck, and then the other 10%, who knows, but, you know, but, you know, and like I said, I think some, you know, like I said, Killswitch, it was undeniable. You know, Lamb of God is a special band. They're just special. Like, you can't always compare, you know, you can't always compare your rock life to someone else's, because it's not fair for different people. That, you know, yeah, there's, even if you came up at the same time, you're not them, you know. So, yeah. So I think things kind of turned out the way they turned out, and I'm perfectly fine with that.
All right, everybody, that was part one on Bauman's breakdown of my interview with Doc Coyle. And really, to call it an interview is kind of, I mean, it was just a conversation, and that's what I like. I don't like it when it's a da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, you don't have those, though.
You know, that's just not me, man. Like I said, I realize that a lot of people are, you know, time is of the essence, and
time is of the essence.
For him to give me so much of his time that day was
cool.
was awesome, man. And as you guys just heard, there was so much in there too that and more to come from Doc Coyle, guitarist for God Forbid, one of the guitarists for God Forbid, that I don't think a lot of people know about their band. And like I said, Mike, I don't know what it is, man. So, you know, sometimes you just never know what's gonna pop in the music industry. And what record or what band or what sound is gonna catch on, and it ended up 10 years ago being Alive or Just Breathing from Killswitch Engage. And like I said, I love Killswitch Engage. We just had Mike D last week for Bauman's breakdown. They were here in early December. Great guys, awesome dudes, make awesome music, and they're really good dudes. But you know, that record ended up help shape the face, of modern metal. But God Forbid is just there's so much great musicianship in what they do, you know, and from the lyrics to the guitars, the bass, the drums. I mean, everything is there, man. Everything is there. And this record, Equilibrium, that they put out, I'm telling you, if you have not heard it, go to facebook.com/official God Forbid. Go to victoryrecords.com/God Forbid. Follow Doc on Twitter at Doc Forbid, and that's the number 4, and then BIDDOC is how you spell his first name. But it was cool because this first one that you guys just heard, I thought it was awesome because we really got into kind of the music scene of the 90s and what they were coming up through, and how there really wasn't a scene for the type of music that they were making at the time that they were making it, you know, especially
right.
Towards the late 90s. There's just this huge wave of new metal going on. And so to be kind of doing what they were doing, I mean, they really had to bust their ass, and I give them credit because they stuck through, you know, their vision and what they wanted for the band. And it's cool to see them, you know, all these years later now, you know, get an opportunity with this album Equilibrium on Victory Records, a new label. But yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed that, you know, in terms of their journey and what it was like for them and coming out of sort of that East Coast collective of bands at the turn of the century. And boy, you know, when you look at it now, and I think it's kind of hard to reflect now because they're all doing so many great things. Shadows Fall, their new album Fire from the Sky came out. Killswitch has a new album coming out this year. Lamb of God just had a new album come out in 2012. So all those bands are still doing stuff. So they're still in the midst of this movement that's been happening over the last 10, 15 years. But it was awesome to kind of to hear the sort of the backstory, and that's really what I want. I want to shed light on this band because they are incredibly incredibly underrated. And I don't know why, because they're great guys and freaking amazing musicians. But I really hope you guys enjoyed that. Like I said, follow Doc on Twitter at Doc4Bid. That's the number 4, BID, and his first name is spelled DOC. And also check him out on metalsucks.net. He's a huge basketball fan, and we're gonna get into that in part 2 of my interview with Doc Forbid. Sorry, man, I'm a little hot here. I'm gonna back up just a little bit. I'm getting a little too poo. I don't want to bludgeon your guys' ears, but I'm so excited. I'm excited. And you know, because like I always say, Mike, and I mean it, man, it's not who I get to talk to. I'm not a name guy. I'm not a name dropper.
Right.
I'm not a music journalist because I want to tell people, oh, I got to talk to so-and-so. I got to talk to... Nobody wants to hear about my stuff. You know what I mean? I do it because I love music, and I love writing, and I love being the guy, you know, and for people who maybe don't have the writing bug, like, I have a need to write, kind of like with the broadcasting, you know what I mean? It's kind of the same thing. You know, I love doing that because it's like there's, you know, we were just watching highlights of the fight that they did for Toledo Sports Network this past weekend. And it's just, there's always a story, you know what I mean? And we all have stories, and we all have a background or something that we came from that kind of helps shape us who we are. And so that's what's cool to me. It's not the names, it's not the level of the bands or whoever I'm talking to. It's you know, how down to earth are you as a human being, and what's your story? And if I can be the middleman between that person's story and sharing it with the rest of you, that's like the coolest freaking position to be in, and I love it. And that's why I do this. And so getting a chance to talk to somebody like Doc Coyle, who is just an incredibly nice, cordial guy, and somebody who is very well spoken, it was friggin' awesome. So I hope you guys enjoyed that one. And like I said, make sure you stay tuned next week for part 2, because we're gonna get into the new album Equilibrium and what went behind that, the backstory behind the record, and we're also going to get into some basketball because I'm a huge basketball junkie, and Doc Coyle can talk hoops with the best of them. I mean, honestly, dude could probably be like on ESPN with Stephen A. Smith and the rest of those dudes going toe for toe because he knows his stuff, man. He knows his stuff. And we talked a lot about that next week. So there's fun stuff coming up in part 2. And you know how you stay tuned for that? You subscribe. You subscribe for free on iTunes. What's that little how you make it like echoey and like trippy sounding? Can we do that real quick? Because I want to get weird with the people here. It's free. Free. No, then I sound like Pennywise. You want a balloon, don't you, Georgie? All colors. That's creepy, man. But it's not even Halloween. I'm talking like that. All colors. They all flow down here.
Oh, no.
That still freaks you out, even as a grown man. Pennywise the dancing clown. But that's how you get it for free, man. I mean, you can listen to it for free anyway, but I can't emphasize enough for you guys to go subscribe, because then you get the new episodes every single week. You never miss anything.
Do they get the Mike Bauman calendar, like you and, you know, different
Oh, yeah,
poses
dude. I'm in like a fireman's outfit for all the lady fans out there. They got me all greased up.
They got you dressed as Justin Bieber in one. And...
Oh, no. You'll never see me dress up like Justin Bieber. All right, and I'll just leave it at that. All right, I don't got anything personal against Justin Bieber.
You don't have his testicles.
Oh, wow, you just took it to a weird level, man. Because he still
got them. Thank goodness.
Yeah,
he almost lost them.
No, I will
snip,
not.
Snip.
There are no Justin Bieber shots, you know. But I am on the beach in like in like a painted on suit. You know how they
David
do that.
David Hasselhoff.
You know how they do that.
Baywatch
more exotic, more erotic. You know how like in a Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition now they do the body paint.
Right.
Yeah, they did that for me, for a dude.
And basically, it's not a calendar that has all the days in the week. It just has the days in the week that you want on it.
Exactly.
So that's a really neat calendar.
It's it's specially customized. Yes. I think the ladies will love it. And you know, who knows? Maybe some of the dudes will love it. You know what I mean? I mean, it's cool. If I got
now we're starting to get a little weird.
Hey, man, if I got universal sex appeal, baby, that's what, you know, that's all right with me. That's all right. But yeah, before we got weird there, and you guys are like, where the hell are these dudes going? Yes, it's free. And you guys can subscribe for free, and that way you don't miss anything. And Mikey, I can't think of a better way to wrap up the end of the year here, because this is our last Bauman's Breakdown episode of the year, than with Doc Coyle. And Doc, if you're listening to this, man, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the music you make, but also for just being a good human being. It was awesome talking to you. And like I said, folks, this is only halvesies. Then we get to come in for the new year and give you part 2, and it's just as awesome as part 1. So please subscribe on iTunes so you don't miss out. Every single week we're going to be giving you stuff, and I got more good stuff coming for you in 2013, baby. That sounds a little weird to say, doesn't it, 2013?
Yeah.
It sounds like it was like Space Odyssey, like we're getting into like some
again?
Weird stuff. You know what I mean? Like
2013.
Yeah, it's creepy
Danger,
stuff.
Will. Danger.
That was like real special effects back in like 1960s.
Yeah,
like, the shuttle's going down. Mayday, mayday, mayday. That's like Chris Farley right there, man. Matt Foley. But yes. Check out the show. Please keep supporting the show. We appreciate it, and it's awesome. I would do it if there was 4 people listening. Because
Are you on Facebook yet?
No, I'm not.
It's
But you can follow me on Twitter at mbauman5, MBAUMAN, and the number 5. And yeah, man, you can give me feedback. You can tell me how much I suck. I know a lot of you out there on the internet that seems to be when people don't seem to like to tell you how good you've done. They like to tell you how awful you were. But hey, I don't care,
That's
man.
all right. It don't bother
just
you.
Feedback is good. So yes, stay tuned. Part 2 is coming.
You've got
up
to be on Facebook though.
in 2013.
Will you promise your listeners you will get on Facebook and put a page on Facebook for this?
I likely will do that, and I'm also thinking about getting it into YouTube as well.
There you go.
There won't be any video; there'll be audio, and then I'll just put up stuff.
Picture of Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, or my calendar. So yeah, we're gonna wrap it up. We're rambling on a little bit here. It's the end of the year. I just once again I want to say I hope you all had a very, very, very Merry Christmas. I hope you have an equally happy New Year. And once again, man, if you're going to go out drinking in a couple of days on New Year's Eve, just make sure you're smart, okay? I know you're happy that the world didn't end and you get to live to die another day, but don't make that day New Year's Eve. If you're going to go out drinking and partying and drinking whatever you drink, okay, whether you're drinking Ciroc and cranberry or JMO and ginger ale, if you're a guy like me, a little bit more old school with the Irish whiskey and ginger ale, it's amazing. It's like liquid velvet to your lips. Make sure you get a designated driver.
Dude, it's got to be straight, though. I'm sorry. JMO on the rocks.
Have you ever had Jameson and ginger ale? Have you ever had it?
I drink it straight. I drink Jameson straight.
That's tough.
That's me, though.
That's tough.
That is my family.
Yeah.
It really is. I poop you not.
You're a descendant of the Jameson Irish.
I am a descendant of that.
Okay, I got to give you a clap for that.
I get nothing for it, but I am. We've genealogied it back. I'm part of that family.
I've never put 2 and 2 together. That's awesome, man. I love you even more now, brother. Point being,
lots of ice.
Make sure, damn it, that you get a designated driver because they will be out in droves on New Year's Eve, especially for all you young dudes that like to have like 18 Bud Lights in a row.
To impress some girl.
Yes, before you even go out, and then you're hammered walking out the door, and then you end up puking on her later. And the night's ruined anyway. Be smart.
Yeah.
Don't try to be a tough guy, all right? Yeah. Don't try to be a wise guy, all right?
Makes you pet her cat or something,
Is that what they're calling it nowadays? And on that note,
wrap this up.
Twitter.com at mbauman5. Once again, follow Doc Coyle at Doc4Bid. That's the number 4. Check out God Forbid, man. I can't emphasize that enough. Facebook.com/official God Forbid. Go to metalsucks.net if you're a basketball fan and check out his hoops logic that he does on the NBA. Because like I said, man, he knows his stuff. Or go to victoryrecords.com and check out God Forbid and all the artists that they've got on that label and merch and music and everything. And go buy Equilibrium, damn it. It's an amazing record, and if you haven't heard it by now, I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know what you're listening to, but I'm telling you front to back, it is by far my favorite record of the year. It is very, very awesome, and we're going to get into it next week. So on that note, keep the faith and be kind to one another. Peace.